Hi, let's talk about balance. What is balance in graphic design? Balance is a visual distribution of weight in a design. I'll be using a seesaw as a case study. Um, the reason why I'll be using a seesaw as a case study is because during our childhood age or our childhood, most of us might have experienced this particular equipment or device being used in our playgrounds and all of that. So I'll be using this as a case study. So if you have a seesaw and a ball is positioned at the end of the seesaw or an object is positioned at the end of the seesaw, and we have something like this, let's say this is the ball, definitely the seesaw will drop on the other hand that has the weight, the first weight. So now, in order to position the seesaw on a straight line, on an horizontal plane that is not diagonal this way, we need to position an equal weight on the other end, something like this, that will give us a result of this for the seesaw. So this is a perfect example of balance, but there are two different types of balance. We have symmetrical and asymmetrical balance. This particular example is a symmetrical balance whereby we have two equal weights on the same side or two equal objects on the same sides. So in graphic design, in a case whereby we have two similar sections of a page, that means we have a symmetrical balance. So I'll be using several real life designs as an example, and we'll point out the symmetrical balance out of them. So first, this is a perfect example of a symmetrical balance. It's the symmetrical balance here works with the negative space. What we have on the left hand side is what we have on the right hand side. Even though we have several emotional display in the MAY, we can still see and we can still understand the relationship between the negative space and the object, the element in the particular design. We can see that the negative space that we have on the left hand side is what we have on the right hand side. So the same apply to every part of the design. The negative space in each of the elements relates to each other. So this is a powerful. So that means we can definitely have a a plane is a single element without characters because the main has characters on it now and still depict balance. So let's check another. This this is also this we can also call this balance because we can see the relationship between the negative space and the element in the design. The negative space that we have on the left hand side is the same on the right hand side and vice versa. So we go and check this. This is a perfect example of a symmetrical balance. Now we are still focusing on symmetrical balance. We can see that what we have on the left hand side is what we have on the right hand side. A perfect example of of balance in our real life or our everyday life is the human being, the human body. So what you have on the right hand side is what you have on the left hand side. Well, your definitely your eyeballs, your eyes in general on the right hand, it's also the same on the left hand. So if the human body system is divided into two, what we have on the right is definitely what we will have on the left hand side. So the human body is a perfect example of symmetrical balance. So which we can also depict in our designs. As you can see, the lines on the track where this lady wants to take the jump or take the run now, it's equal on both sides. So let's go up and see. This is a perfect example, just like the negative space relating with the element in the O composition, depicting balance. This also, and this is a perfect example of balance too, because what we have on the left is the same thing as what we have on the right. We are still focusing on symmetrical balance. And after the end of this, we'll move and see the other type of balance that we can come back and relate each of them together. So we also have the same thing here. We can actually depict or reflect the most of these symmetrical means of balance in our design, not just with the use of human alone, even with elements. This is a perfect example of balance, left hand and right hand side. Also, This is a perfect example of balance. As we can see, the object, the shapes that we have on the left is the same as that we have on the right. If you try to create a grid line in between the design, a grid line in between the design, even both vertically and horizontally, we still have the same thing on axis A and axis B, just the same thing on left and right. So this is a perfect example also. And as we keep going and going and going, we keep seeing symmetrical balance in different forms can be created with the use of different elements and movement of typographies and all of that. As you can see, the Sunday 16th April 2022 as an element on the left hand of the design, and by checking on the right we have something similar to that on the right hand side with with an interplay of same colors, black and gold. So balance can be depicted with typographies, can be depicted with negative space, can be depicted with images and shapes and all of that. So this is a perfect example of balance. We can see the objects are relating. They are definitely relating. The elements are relating with each other, and the negative space also. The same thing apply to this. If we divide to get the full idea about symmetrical balance, you have to divide the design into two equal parts and see either horizontally or vertically and see if the design can be replicated on both sides separately. So definitely this is a perfect example of that. And this, as you can see, if we divide this into two, we notice that we still have one boot on the other hand and the other boot on the other hand. Now, talking about asymmetrical balance, we'll still be using the seesaw as a perfect example of for the asymmetrical balance. So now, if we have two objects, a bigger object and a smaller object, we definitely know that the object will tilt, the seesaw will tilt towards the one with the larger weight in this form. And when we have something of this nature, that means if we now want to balance the seesaw or the whole composition alongside an horizontal line that will not give us a diagonal looking seesaw, we need to position weight on the right hand side that is equal to weight on the right on the left hand side. That means it's either we add up the weight on the smaller part of the seesaw, or we go back and reduce the bigger weight of the seesaw. So now in asymmetrical balance, there is definitely no compulsion of having two or identical sides of the design. That which means we can definitely have different elements, but still visually they are balanced. So this is a perfect example of asymmetrical balance. That means what we have on A might not be what we have on B, but visually it is still balanced. There is no rule. There is no rule to asymmetrical balance. It's all about visual instinct, and you need to understand the flow. But there are ways to go about it. The asymmetrical balance is actually the was is actually can actually be reflected or gotten through the movement of or positioning of element in design in such a way that the design will look visually composed or look visually presentable. So that is what asymmetrical balance is. I will give an examples of asymmetrical balance which we'll quickly brush on right now so that we don't take much of the of the session or the video. So now, this is a perfect example of asymmetrical balance. In our everyday life, when it comes to design, I notice I've studied that most designers basically they make use of or try to reflect more of asymmetrical balance compared to symmetrical balance, because most people feel, which is not true. Most people feel symmetrical balance might be boring, but if you are so good at it, it will be very interesting for you. So, but most designs I've seen lately, this particular years past, I noticed that asymmetrical balance is what is trending and it's common. That will definitely not stop your design from selling. That will definitely not reduce your creativity. You can be creative in diverse ways. There is no limitations to graphic design. As I see personally, I see graphic design more of art. So there is no limitations to it. just work by the principles and you get things done rightly. So this is a perfect example of asymmetrical balance. If we try to check, like I said, asymmetrical balance can be achieved by positioning the object in a composition, perfect movement of objects in a position. What asymmetrical balance does is it helps you travel through a design. It carries you from a point in a design to another point in a design. Symmetrical balance will make you focus on a particular section of a design. So asymmetrical balance also has a way of making you focus through the process or through the means of hierarchy. So when I talk about hierarchy, that means there is a point of focus in a design, then you try to see every other thing related or linked with it on the composition. So talking about asymmetrical balance, as you can see, the focus in this design talks about trade with horse. So the first thing a client or the viewer rather will see is the trade with us, which will make them travel far and wide on the composition to make them see we trade Bitcoin gift card and all of the rest, even the picture on the other hand. There is a secret to asymmetrical balance that I personally use. I believe I would I have this belief that images are more heavier than text. So if we can actually relate our design in such a manner whereby our our images complement the weight of the text, complement the amount or the visual weight of the text, then we will definitely understand the flow of asymmetrical balance. I'll take this. I will quickly take us to the next slide so that we can see what I mean by this. So this is a perfect example. Now, on the right hand side, we have the host and the guest content, and on the left hand side, we have the tag bar and the images of the persons. So now in this particular composition, as you can see, there are more text compared to the images in this composition. So now the numbers, if we can try to position this particular side of the host and guest side, the white side of the design, on a seesaw, and the picture side on a seesaw, we will definitely see that the composition is actually on a straight line without bending or tilting. But in a situation whereby we try to enlarge the picture or make it more bigger or something, we tend to see that visually the image or the composition or the seesaw, so to say, will bend or tilt. So what I'm trying to say here is the idea behind images larger or weightier than text is real. So whenever we are making a composition or positioning our element in our canvas or our design, we should know that we have to relate the text content with the image content. There are exceptions to this when it comes to you making an image a background, which we will also brush through during this course of during this session. So this is an asymmetrical balance because definitely what we have on the left hand side is not what we have on the right hand side. But as we can see, the weight on each side are equal to each other. We can see how the right side is crowded compared to the left hand side. So this is a perfect example. So asymmetrical balance can also be depicted with not just image but with concept. The concept. So what do I mean with concept? If we move closer to this particular image, we'll see that there is a part the image of this boy is actually talking about balance also. We can see the glasses look balanced. But now to now create a shift between or a blend between symmetry and asymmetry, we can now see that there is a paper that was kept behind the glasses of the child. So this is also a means of creating asymmetrical balance, and the whole composition itself talks about asymmetrical balance. How is this? Now, this is a perfect example. As we can see that the amount of text on this end of the composition is different from the amount of text here, but the image is taking almost half of what we have here. So to complement what we have on the left and what they have on the right, then an image comes in, and by dividing it into two, you notice that what we have here is definitely not what we have here, but visually they strike a balance between each other, which gives us asymmetry. So now the same thing, let's go to the upper part of the design. We can see an image, the image of, without this test, we definitely have a symmetrical composition on the upper part of the design. But now to now create a blend of asymmetry, a blend between asymmetry and symmetry, then there is now a bold, a weighty test. The world is our home. That was used to complement the visual composition around this end, which is the eyes of the little girl. So balance can actually be or asymmetrical balance can actually spell out or push out concept, or can be used as a concept in most of our design. Every single part of the design can talk more about a particular principle of design, which definitely will make people understand you know what you're doing. That's just it. So let's go. Now, balance can also be reflected through colors. We really don't need to talk about balance or focus balance more on shapes. So balance can be reflected with even effect. This is color that's being used to reflect balance. So we can actually reflect balance with true colors. So now, as we can see on the left and on the right hand side, we have gray colors of the text of the typography. Then at the middle, we now have colors at the middle. So we can definitely call this asymmetrical balance because we don't have the same weight of the gray on the left hand equal to the gray on the right hand. But balance was more reflected with the colors, with the interplay of color. The color that we have on the left is what we have on the right. So we can also reflect balance through color. We can reflect balance. So that is that for balance.